Hello everyone, your radar contact and welcome to another VASAviation video. Today we're gonna be talking about the preliminary report that was released by the Ethiopian authorities a few days ago about the Ethiopian Flight 302 that crashed in Ethiopia last month. First of all, I want to give a very big shout out to the guys of the Aviation Herald. avherald.com is the website, which is a website that covers pretty much everything that happens in aviation, especially incidents and accidents, and they have very reliable sources of information, and they are amazing to find information and reports and whatever you want to find about an incident or accident in commercial, particularly commercial flights, diversions, or whatever incident that happens in aviation. You have it there. So very big shout out to the guys of avherald.com, the Aviation Herald, for their work. So now going on with the information that we know about the Ethiopian Flight 302 that crashed in Ethiopia last month. The authorities have just released a preliminary report actually a few days ago on April 4th, 2019. Ethiopia Civil Aviation Authority released their preliminary report, and we're gonna go all through the lines that they have about the accident. They have gone through cockpit voice recorder, CVR, and the flight data recorder, FDR, with some of the information, some of the inputs, some of the things that gone wrong in the cockpit and in the aircraft, on board the aircraft, that led to the accident to happen. So yeah, let's get to it. So first of all, right before going all through the detailed information, almost second by second into the flight, they give us some basic and some more important information about the findings that they have about the aircraft and the accident. On the basis of the initial information gathered during the course of the investigation, the following facts have been determined. The aircraft possessed a valid certificate of airworthiness. You guys know that every single aircraft, every single one, light, medium, heavy, or whatever aircraft, needs to have a certificate of airworthiness, which proves that that aircraft is okay and is permitted to fly. The crew obtained the license and qualifications to conduct the flight. Both pilots were okay, were permitted, and were able and allowed to fly on that aircraft. We'll go through the details of both the captain and first officer later on. The takeoff roll appeared normal, including normal values of left and right angle of attack, AOA. Shortly after liftoff, for your information, if you're not very familiar with these terms, liftoff is when the whole of the aircraft has left the ground. So we have basically two moments of a takeoff when leaving the ground, when getting into the air, and one is rotation, when we pull the yoke or the control column or whatever we have, the side stick or whatever, we pull that and rotate, which is getting the nose wheel off the ground. That's one stage. And then we have a second stage, which is liftoff, when the main gears and the rear wheels have also lifted off the ground and have left the ground. That is liftoff, when the entire aircraft is off the ground. Shortly after liftoff, the value of the left angle of attack sensor deviated from the right one and reached 74.5 degrees. Crazy. While the right angle of attack sensor value was 15.3 degrees. Then after, the stick shaker activated and remained active until near the end of the flight. But now we have some information that the left AOA, the left angle of attack sensor, was failing. So now they give us some information about the crew, especially the pilots. The ECAA, which is the Ethiopian Civil Aviation Authority, stated the captain, 29 years old, ATPL, 8,122 hours total. Boeing 737 new NG experience is 1,417 hours, and 103 hours on the Boeing 737 MAX. Was assisted by a first officer, 25 years old, license not reported, we assume it's also ATPL. 361 hours total. He had a 207 hours on the 737NG and 56 hours on the Boeing 737 MAX. According to the ECAA licenses, the captain was permitted to act as a pilot in command and the first officer as first officer on the Boeing 737 MAX 8. So they both were okay to fly this aircraft. So now the preliminary report goes deeply into detail, knowing the information that they have right now on hand. We have the takeoff roll began from runway 07 right at a field elevation of 2,333 meters, which is really high, at approximately 5:38. This is Zulu time, remember. All these times are Zulu times, UTC, Universal Time Coordinated, with a flap setting of 5 degrees and a stabilizer setting of 5.6 units, which is really normal for this aircraft, for this performance at this given altitude and elevation. The takeoff roll appeared normal, including normal values of left and right angle of attack AOA. During takeoff roll, the engines stabilized at about 94% N1, which is very normal as well, which matched the N1 reference recorded on the flight data recorder. At 5:38 and 44 seconds, shortly after liftoff, the left and right recorded AOA values deviated. First sign. Left AOA decreased to 11.1 degrees, then increased to 35.7 degrees, while value of right AOA indicated 14.9 degrees. Then after, the left AOA value reached 74.5 degrees in 3/4 of a second, while the right AOA reached a maximum value of 15.3. This is a very important point because now we know for sure that the left sensor of the AOA sensor from the left side, is failing, is malfunctioning. And the right side AOA is actually, it's not malfunctioning, it's working properly, but the left one is malfunctioning. So now we have a AOA disagree, which is what causes the MCAS to become active. Between liftoff and 1,000 feet above ground level, AGL, the pitch stream position moved between 4.9 and 5.9 units in response to manual electric trim inputs. At 1,000 feet AGL, the pitch stream position was at 5.6 units. We have, in the cockpit, we have two ways of moving the trim wheel, actually on the tail of the aircraft. One of them is moving manually the trim wheel that we have on the pedestal in the cockpit, and another one, if we are equipped with it, is an electrical trim that we have on the yoke that we can manually move up and down to move the trim up and down. That is very normal. They moved it. We assume that the captain, which was the pilot flying, moved the trim from 4.9 points to 5.9 units to manual electric trim puts. So he moved the trim with his manual electric trim on the yoke. At 39:45, captain requested flaps up and first officer acknowledged. 1 second later, flap handle moved from 5 to 0 degrees and flaps retraction began. So captain said, flaps up, speed check flaps up, and the first officer, speed check flaps up and flaps lever to 0. One important note here is that the MCAS only activates if flaps are retracted and the autopilot is off, disengaged. At 39:57, the captain advised again the first officer to request to maintain runway heading and that they are having flight controls problem. When in an emergency right after takeoff, we are requested, or we prefer, to maintain runway heading, which is to go straight off the runway, just to go through our checklist or whatever. So these guys requested the control tower to the controller to maintain runway heading, and the controller allowed so. At 5:40, shortly after the autopilot disengaged, it had been disengaged before, but we don't know if it had been disengaged automatically or manually by the pilots, but it had been disengaged. The flight data recorder recorded an automatic aircraft nose down, which is called A&D, activated for 9 seconds, and pitch trimmed moved down from 4.6 to 2.1 units. The climb was arrested and the aircraft descended slightly. At 40:03, ground proximity warning system, which is the GPWS, don't sink alert occurred. This alert comes off when the aircraft is in a nose down position and terrain is ahead, so don't sink is called out by the GPWS. At 40:12, approximately 3 seconds after A&D stabilizer motion ends, electric trim in the aircraft nose up direction is recorded on the flight data recorder, and the stabilizer moved in the ANU nose up position direction to 2.4 units. The aircraft pitch attitude remained about the same as the back pressure on the column increased. So the pilot was doing back pressure on the yoke to create a pitch up momentum. At 40:20, approximately 5 seconds after the end of the ANU stabilizer motion, a second instance of automatic A&D stabilizer trim occurred and the stabilizer moved down and reached 0.4 units. So we have a very interesting situation right here. So we first had a A&D, which is automatic pitch down motion, pitching the aircraft down. Then the pilot notices that and pitches the aircraft up again by back pressure and trim, an electric trim. But now again, we have a pitch down motion, an automatic pitch down motion, which creates again a pitch down momentum. So the aircraft was, imagine the aircraft was leveled and automatically it pitches down and the pilot corrects that, pitch up, but then pitches down again. So it's like moving up and down over and over again. At 40:28, manual electric trim in the ANU direction, which is pitch up, was recorded and the stabilizer reversed moving in the ANU direction, and then the trim reached 2.3 units. So again, we have a second pitch up motion by the pilots pushing the aircraft, actually pulling the aircraft up to pitch up the aircraft. At 40:35, the first officer called out stop trim cutout 2 times, which is the standard procedure in case this happens. Captain agreed and first officer confirmed a stop trim cutout. At 40:41, approximately 5 seconds after the end of the ANU stabilizer motion, this last pitch up motion by the pilots, a third instance of pitch down automatic trim command occurred without any corresponding motion of the stabilizer. From 05:40:42 to 05:43:11, about 2.5 minutes, the stabilizer position gradually moved in the pitch down direction from 2.3 units to 2.1 units. During this time, aft force was applied to the control columns, which remained aft of neutral position. So the pilots were moving the column, the yoke, pulling the yoke towards them to pitch the aircraft up. The left indicated airspeed increased from approximately 305 knots to approximately 340 knots, which is VMO. For those who are not familiar, VMO is the maximum operating speed for a particular aircraft. In this case, 340 knots is the VMO for the Boeing 737 MAX. The right indicated airspeed was approximately 20 or 25 knots higher than the left one. The data indicates that aft force, which is pulling the control column, the yoke, towards you to pitch the aircraft up, was applied to both columns simultaneously several times throughout the recording. During almost a minute, we have some overspeed warnings and clackers that are recorded by the cockpit voice recorder and some actions, but now at 41:46, the captain asked the first officer if the trim is functional. The first officer has replied that the trim was not working and asked if he could try it manually. The captain told him to try, and at 41:54, a few seconds later, the first officer replied that it is not working. At 43:11, about 32 seconds before the end of the recording, so we assume we're 32 seconds away of the crash, at approximately 13,400 feet, 2 momentary manual electrical trim inputs are recorded in the pitch up direction. So I'm substituting this ANU and AND for more understanding for those who are not very familiar with these terms. ANU is pitch up and AND is pitch down. So 2 momentary manual electric trim inputs are recorded in the pitch up direction. The stabilizer moved in the pitch up direction from 2.1 to 2.3 units. So they are again trying to manually pitch the aircraft up with the electrical trim, which is those that I explained before. So we're coming to an end, and I have to admit and I have to say that I had goosebumps when I first read these lines right here, because it is horrific. At 05:43:20, approximately 5 seconds after the last manual electric trim input, an A&D pitch down automatic trim command occurred, and the stabilizer moved in the pitch down direction from 2.3 points to 1.0 units in approximately 5 seconds. The aircraft began pitching nose down. Now the aircraft is literally diving onto the ground. Additional simultaneous aft column force was applied. So the pilots, I assume both pilots at the same time, are trying to pull the yoke towards themselves and try to pitch the aircraft up again. But the nose down pitch continues, eventually reaching 40 degrees nose down. The aircraft is now literally and directly pitching down onto the ground. The stabilizer position varied between 1.1 and 0.8 units for the remainder of the recording. So yeah, it's 40 degrees nose down. The aircraft is going right onto the ground. The left indicated airspeed increased, eventually reaching approximately 458 knots, and the right indicated airspeed reached 500 knots at the end of the recording. The last recorded pressure altitude was 5,419 feet on the left one and 8,399 feet on the right side. We have also here some graphics that are extracted from the flight data recorder that show different information and different parameters that the flight data recorders have, so that we can see how the aircraft, all systems and controls and everything work. I'm gonna just right now, let me take my face out of the screen so that you guys can see all the graphics here and take a look at them. I also want to give a big shout out to the Aviation Herald website, avherald.com. You can go there and read to the entire preliminary report yourself. I have left some points of this video to save some time, and I center myself and I focused on the most important things here and trying to explain some of the details as a pilot's perspective, also to give some information for those people that are not maybe very familiar with the most of the aviation terms here, so that all of you can understand what happened. And this is, as I said, this is a preliminary report. This is not a final report whatsoever, not a final released information at all. It's just a preliminary report, just according to what they have found and what they have extracted of the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. Stay tuned to the channel. As soon as they release more information, official information, this is all everything is official here. So as soon as they release more information, I'll try to bring in here on VASAviation website, so that you guys can also, maybe you don't have access to these websites or you prefer to just watch a video, so I will try to bring it to VASAviation as soon as it releases. So I know I'm late with this. I'm recording this 4 days after the preliminary report has been released, but I've been flying and I've been quite busy. But I just found a little gap on my free time to make this video, so that you guys can understand what has happened and what we know up to date right now. So that's everything. So frequency change approved, and thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.